Welcome to this evening's event, which is being recorded. A link to the video will be sent to attendees in a few days. Please note this event offers closed captioning. Look for and press CC at the bottom of your screen to turn that on and off. I'm Judy Sternberg, President of the League of Women Voters of the Rochester metro area. And along with the Rochester Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we are pleased to bring you tonight's candidate forum for the Rochester City Council at-large Democratic primary. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political parties or candidates. It encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League is open to anyone who shares our purpose and principles. And now let me introduce you to Jacqueline Tyson.
Thank you, Judy. I am Jacqueline Tyson, President of the Rochester Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, founded 108 years ago at Howard University, is a nonpartisan organization of college-educated women committed to public service with a primary focus on the Black community. The Rochester Alumni Chapter, chartered in 1965, serves Greater Rochester with programs that reflect a 5-point programmatic thrust, including economic development, educational development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, and political awareness and involvement. We sponsor social action activities that include voter registration, education, and mobilization. Thank you for joining our candidates forum. I would now like to introduce our moderator for this evening's event, Katrina Owens, who is a member of the Rochester Alumni Chapter. Thank you.
Good evening, Rochester community. Thank you for joining our candidates forum for City Council tonight. Candidates will discuss their platform and address issues facing our community. All 16 candidates who appear on the ballot were invited to participate. The candidates who are not with us tonight are Patricia D. Williams, Magahi, Leticia Stasio, Britton Hargers, Willie Lightfoot, Miguel Powell, and Kimberly Smith. Now, I'd like to explain the process for tonight's candidate forum, since we're using a different kind of forum tonight. It's a little different than usual. Shortly before the audience came into the event, candidates were informed that there will be 2 rounds of addressing select questions. Candidates were presented with 6 questions, and from those 6 questions, they will have the opportunity to choose 1 question within the first round, given 3 minutes to give their answer. And in the second round, they'll do the same. They will be presented with these 6 questions again and have 3 minutes to give their answer. The questions, as you can see, are, please state and explain how your strongest quality or experience will help you be an effective city council member. Number 2, what do you understand about the role and responsibility of a city council member? Number 3, what do you see as the 2 main challenges the city faces, and what solutions do you propose? Number 4, what does public safety mean to you? What would be your priority investments, and would you divert funds from the police budget to pay for them? Number 5, where do you stand on requiring proof of the COVID-19 vaccination to attend public events? And how will you address the community of those who have not been vaccinated? Number 6, our neighborhoods are increasingly plagued with quality of life intrusions, such as racing of dirt bikes, ATVs, fireworks and littering, and inadequate city services, such as snow removal and maintenance of storm drains. How would you address these issues? Now, the order of those speaking was determined earlier by a lottery. And this evening, our timekeeper for this evening is Dr. Gail Harrison. Dr. Gail Harrison will hold up cards to let the candidates know how much time they have remaining, as you can see here, and when their time is up. Now, let me introduce the candidates to you this evening. Tonight we have Mr. Miguel Melendez. Wave, please. Luis Aponte. Anthony Hall. Jasmine Ivory Robinson. Mitch Gruber. Jonathan Hardin. Jasmine Regler. Victor Sanchez. Alexander White. And Stanley Martin. We will now start the first round of questions. Mr. Melendez, please unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening, Rochester. My name is Miguel Melendez. I'm a current city council member. I joined in September. I'm going to answer the first 2 questions to start. So as far as my qualities go, I believe that I am a very strong listener. I believe in listening to people in the community, trying to understand the challenges that they face, and connecting the resources available in the community and in government back to neighborhoods. I've spent my entire career working on addressing quality of life issues, improving outcomes in communities, particularly communities of color, and bringing amenities to the community, such as parks, playgrounds, play spaces, new housing opportunities, and new economic development projects. I believe as a council member, I will be able to translate my experience, whether it's through my day job as the Chief Community Engagement Officer at Ivory, or other experiences I've had serving on boards and commissions throughout the city and the county, to translate those resources and those skills into creating new opportunities for the city of Rochester. As far as my role as a council member, the responsibilities are vast. The primary responsibilities are legislative and looking at the budget and making sure that we align the resources of government to the needs of the community. I believe in my first 7 months, and as I go into this budget season, I've done a lot of listening, a lot of learning, and I think you'll see that in this budget that's coming up, we have a lot of opportunities to impact quality of life, to improve housing opportunities in the city of Rochester, to increase home ownership opportunities, to fully fund the PAB, which is something that we're all excited about. And at the end of the day, I think what I bring to the table is a type of person who will help build some bridges across different viewpoints in government. We have people on different ends of the spectrum in terms of how they see the city and the city issues. And I find myself often in the middle of those things, trying to negotiate and bring a just and sound voice to these issues. Since I have additional time, I'll just say this. One of the quality of life issues that I know is very prevalent in the city right now is the dirt bike and ATV issue. I've been working on trying to find solutions to this, working with other council members to look at alternative locations where we might be able to find a space that can accommodate that type of activity. But it is tremendously challenging, especially in some of our commercial corridors where people have to weave and avoid people who are riding dirt bikes and ATVs in the community. So I'm committed to trying to figure this out. I'm also committed to litter. I've done a lot around syringe litter, for example, in the city of Rochester. We've made great strides. We have still some work to do. And I look forward to continue serving as a city council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Mr. Aponte, you're next. You may unmute.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I also picked number one for the strongest quality. I feel that what I bring to the table is the fact of being able to unite people and unite communities. I have been a strong volunteer in the community, especially in the Josana and North Clinton Avenue area for many years. I've raised my family in both of those areas, and I've been able to bring people together. I've been able to bring gang members together just to be able to squash certain things that were bringing huge amount of violence to the area. I feel that to be on council means that you're able to resolve issues with the community. Right now, one of the biggest problems facing this community is the fact that they feel they have no leadership, and they feel that the leadership has forgotten about them and forgotten about the neighborhoods. I feel as a council member, you're responsible for the neighborhoods because you're elected by the neighborhoods, regardless if you're a district member or you're an at-large member. I want to make sure I remember the questions. I apologize. I feel that my experience as a paramedic, I have served people in the worst of times throughout the city from every corner, every religion, and every race. I treat everybody the same, and I feel that everyone deserves to be heard. I feel that the city has forgotten about that. Not all, but a lot have. For my second question, what do you understand about the role and responsibility of city council members? Yes, there is a fiscal responsibility, but there's a human responsibility. You know, we always want to talk about dollar amounts and dollar amounts and dollar amounts, but we forget what those dollar amounts represent. It represents services that either come to a community or are taken out of a community. So I really feel that we have to go back and rebuild our neighborhoods and go back and bring back the responsibility to our neighborhoods from City Hall. As a paramedic, I can tell you that I have served this community for many years, well over 30 years, and I feel that the neighborhoods have been forgotten. I feel that, you know, there's been a lot of commitment into the inner loop, but once you leave the inner loop, you see where the commitment was lost, and that belongs to the neighborhoods and the people that live in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aponte. Mr. Anthony Hall, you're next. Please unmute.
Thank you. I'm going to dive right in and take a stab at number 4. And it's important. Number 4 and number 6, actually. For me, they actually go together, talking about public safety as well as diverting funds from Rochester Police Department. It's important. Public safety means everything to me. As a former gang specialist of the city of Rochester Pathways to Peace program and a dean of students at Vertus Charter School, and currently the executive director of Book Bags Express, I interact with our community on a day-to-day basis and see what there is that's lacking in our community. And overall, our community definitely wants to feel safe. And what the safety looks like is important for those folks in our community. And I think what's being lost in this conversation is our community is being talked at and not talked with. And it's important as a representative of council that you build a larger table to bring folks in that are directly impacted by the misconduct of RPD, the disparities within the communities. That's very important. And I believe, you know, as I've done many roles and wear many hats, I bring folks together all across the city to hash out things. And definitely diverting funds to grassroots organizations in our community that are addressing some of the elements that we're talking about when we're talking about poverty, when we're talking about littering, when we're talking about violence. You have grassroots organizations and individuals in our community that are champions in this work and are being left out the conversation, and being left out with no funds to really effectuate change in their area. So some of those funds definitely should be diverted to these organizations and individuals. For number 6, so I believe that the ATVs and off bike trails and such, I think it's important that we understand those are recreational activities, and it's important that we find a scope where Rochesterians can rec. And we have to dig deep with the county and other partnerships to make sure that we get a plot of land and allow people to experience their off-road biking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hall. Ms. Jasmine Ivory Robinson is next. Please unmute.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me tonight. My name is Jasmine Ivory Robinson, and I'm gonna address around the first 2 questions. So I'll give you a little bit of background about who I am. I'm from Rochester, New York, born and raised here, grew up on Avenue E and First Street, was bused through the Urban Suburban program and graduated from Pittsford Minden. I'm 31 years old. And I say that because I strongly believe in the importance of having our young people running for government positions. My work experience around that. So I currently work at Nazareth College as a career coach. I am the career coach for social work majors. I am also the program coordinator for our voter and political engagement. I hold a bachelor's degree from RIT in political science, a master's in management from Nazareth, and I'm working on a second master's in marketing and communication, as well as my doctorate in educational leadership. So that's pretty much a quick overview of my work and school experience. I also have experience working in foreclosures and bankruptcies. I specifically worked in the areas where we worked with homeowners throughout Monroe counties, a lot in the city of Rochester, and ensuring that they were able to work together and find a solution for them to save their home. So that is some of my experience and some of the main issues that I am confident about and just immersed in. Community involvement has always been something I've been doing from a child all the way up until the age of 31. I served as the community service coordinator within my sorority at the graduate chapter. So I've done a lot of work in the community. You may not have seen my face front and centered, but I am one of those silent workers in the background that's always advocating and working in the spaces that I am. And what I understand as the role and responsibility of city council member, we are a servant leader. So as a city council member, as anyone working to help individuals in our community, our first and foremost is to be a servant leader. We have to understand the needs of our community, and we have to represent those and find the best solutions that help us all and not just specific groups. We have to work together as one community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Mitch Gruber. Please unmute.
Yes, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this event. I really appreciate the time. I'm going to do as was asked and respond to the first 2 questions, which is really a bit more of a bio and who I am. And if I were to describe my who I am as a city council person in one word, it would be responsive. When someone calls, I answer. And that's something that's been ingrained in me due to my career at FoodLink. I've been at FoodLink for 13 years now. I'm the chief of partnerships there. And when someone calls and needs food, it's my job to help them get it and get it quickly. That's the ethos that I bring to city council too. And that ranges. It could be very simple and singular problems. When somebody calls because their garbage wasn't picked up, it's my job to make sure their garbage gets picked up. And I have a whole host of people in this community who know that I do that and I do it quickly for them. But also when organizations call or advocates call and talk about the fact that we need sweeping legislative change, that's something I respond to and work on as well. That was true when I co-authored legislation on police accountability. It was true when I helped change the way our city charter defines affordable housing. And it was true when I banned conversion therapy in our city. And in terms of the second question related to the role of a city council person, it ultimately boils down to two things. And it took me a while to learn this. And I appreciate all the challengers on the call. I was in the same place 4 years ago. There's a lot to a city council position, but ultimately it does boil down to two major things, which is being the fiduciary oversight of the city, making sure that we're spending dollars wisely. And second of all, making sure that we're involved in all land use issues, which is why this is a really exciting moment to have experienced city council members, because we're going through a zoning rewrite. But, you know, I would just take that one step further and say that ultimately a good city council person goes beyond just the policy and legislative stuff and is also there to be a collaborator and to connect the dots. I see Dr. Harrison's giving me 1 minute, so I'm just going to give one example about that. Let's take the refugee community as an example. There's a lot of things we've done policy-wise to work with the refugee community in Rochester. We became a sanctuary city. We made sure that some of the refugee social service organizations had access to some of the dollars related to eviction prevention, so on and so forth. But we have to go beyond that and connect the dots. So what I've done recently in working with the refugee community is making sure they're connected to some of the most effective job training programs we have in Rochester, from YAMTEP over on Hollenbeck Street to the commissary downtown, making sure those organizations have the ability to attract the refugee community. That takes connecting dots, having relationships, and having people's trust. And that's what I've done for the past 4 years, and I hope to have a second term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. Mr. Jonathan Hardin, you are next. Please unmute.
Yes, I'm going to go with the first two questions, and thank you guys for organizing this forum tonight. With the first question, my name is Jonathan Hardin. I've worked in my community for the past 10 years as the former president and board member of the Charlotte Community Association. I'm also served as the first chair of Many Neighbors Building Neighborhoods, which is a diverse organization of neighborhood associations and block clubs from across the city. So I feel that I've made a ton of connections across the city. I understand the issues that are going on in the neighborhoods, and I also see that the neighborhood associations and the block clubs feel that they aren't being heard, whether it's being heard at their neighborhood service centers or it's being heard through the administration. So I feel that over the past 10 years, I've built the relationships to where I can pick up those phone and talk with the people within the neighborhoods to figure out their concerns, or to build relationships, or to try to connect the dots between different groups that may be going at each other over different issues, or trying to resolve some of the crime issues that are going in the neighborhoods. We've built not only block clubs throughout our neighborhoods associations in the Northwest, but we tried to build neighborhood watch programs and give incentives for people to come and become a part of their neighborhood association. I feel that's very important. With question two, I feel that the most important thing that a council person does is constituent services, and listening to the people in the community and going out and meeting with them regularly and monthly, and understanding their challenges and helping them fix everything from a pothole that may be in front of their home, or a trash can that is missing or needing to be replaced. But I feel that as a council person, not only overseeing the budget and helping organize those funds or divert those funds to where they need to go, but you need to have those relationships with the neighborhoods to understand what the people are asking for, the quality of life issues they may be facing, and how we can change that so that we increase the quality of life in our neighborhoods. I think that we can do that with one quick example is our neighborhood neighborhood service centers. Some of them have strategic plans that have not been updated for the past 10 years. And I know this is not a function that is directly a council people can vote on, but is something that the council members can go to those neighborhood service centers and work with the administration to make sure that we get them caught up and see the needs that the neighborhoods presently have, so that we can increase the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hardin. Next, we have Jasmine Regler. Please unmute.
Hello, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Jasmine Regler, and I'm going to answer the first two questions as well. So I think my strongest qualities are speaking truth to power and bringing people together. And I'll give you an example of how I did that last year to get the city government to change a policy that they had on the books for 11 years. So last year, I was supposed to be a legislative aide for one of the city council members, Mary Lupian. I worked with her for a whole month, meeting the city department heads, going with her to city council meetings. My drug test came back. It tested positive for THC, the active component in marijuana. From that point on, the city told me that I was done. I couldn't even apply for a job for another year. So I accepted that without fully accepting it. I advocated for the city to end their testing for THC. And within 4 months, I got an 11-year policy change. I did that with support of the community. I asked people to support me and speak at city council. I had a handful of people that did that for 2 months. I had a meeting with the mayor. I stuck to the facts. I do not make anything personal. Like I said, I just speak truth to power. And within 4 months, I was able to change city policy that was on the book for 11 years. And by doing that, I opened the door for Black and brown people in our community to now access good city jobs. The second one, the role and responsibility of city council member, I would say first, we know what's on the books, what says needs to be done, but I say city council members need to represent the community. That's how we got in here, and the community needs to be our voice. The 9 members of city council shouldn't be making any decisions based on what they want. We need to be making decisions based on what the community wants. And I think that's the first role of a city council member, to hear from the community. Of course, we have to deal with the budget, but I think if we deal with the people first, the budget will show that we are representing the people. Just to give a brief about me, I work at St. Joseph's House of Hospitality. We are a soup kitchen and emergency shelter. So I deal with the most marginalized and vulnerable in our community every day. I want to run to give those people a voice. I'm also with the Rochester Citywide Tenant Union, making sure tenants have quality, affordable, decent housing, because we are in a housing crisis right now in our city with rents going up. And I'm just here to continue to help our city, help our community in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next candidate is Victor Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez, please unmute your microphone and begin.
Hello, thank you for inviting me here tonight, and thank you for everyone that worked on organizing this event and everyone that's attending. My name is Victor Sanchez. I'm going to answer the first 2 questions with talking a little bit about myself and where I came from, because I believe that's really where I can show what I bring to the city council position. I was born in Mexico, and I'm an immigrant to the United States, and my family came here in search of the American dream. As an LGBTQ member as well, I understand very personally the injustices and inequities that have faced our community. I graduated from RIT with a background in engineering, and I apply that every day to the work that I do professionally and in the community. I look at things in a very strategic manner and have a strategic plan. But because of my identities, I make sure that I apply any solutions with an equity and justice lens. I want to see a city that invites young people to move here, that invites young families to start in our community, but that also assures that we bring and lift the people up that have been here for generations along with us. I have worked in the community with several grassroots organizations and activists in Rochester, as well as being able to focus on some initiatives that the city has focused on, like Rock the River Way, the Comprehensive Plan 2034, Imagine RTS. So I understand how the systems in our city government work, and how do we bring our community together to be able to adapt and change those systems. And then when we talk a lot about the systemic changes that need to take place in our city, we really need leaders that are willing and committed to make those changes, but understand how to make those changes. As far as the role that city council plays, it's very much about fiscal responsibility and assuring that the policies and legislations that we use to govern our city apply to what the residents of our community want. And that is started by assuring that we listen to our community, have ties to the community, and bring in a lot of the experts that we see in doing the day-to-day work on a forefront of changes, from transportation to climate change to housing, and use those expertise to help dictate how we're going to move our community forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. And next we have Mr. Alex White. Please unmute.
Thank you, everyone who's here and everyone who helped put this together. I'm Alex White, and I am going to start with question 2 and then go to question 1. What City Council does, like Mitch Gruber said, is deal with budget, land use, and governance. It passes ordinance to control the city. It deals with all financial issues of the city and all land use. Why I'm a good candidate for this is experience, education, and dedication. I have a master's degree at SUNY Brockport. I've been a teacher. I started a business in the city, which this year is going to celebrate its 25th year in business on Monroe Avenue. During this time, I've been an activist and an organizer in many groups in the city. I have worked with businesses through the Good Business Association. I've worked on police issues, particularly body cameras with UCLM, and I have helped Oasis stay in business to provide job training to adults without a high school education. I have spent decades trying to get a handle and trying to deal with government. I've attended more than a decade worth of city council meetings. I've read more than 15 budgets. I've even run for mayor. I've gotten legislation passed. I've saved programs. I've written grants. I've created jobs. And I've worked with many community groups to get what they want to happen. I bring this passion, this long-term dedication to this office, and I hope that the residents can see that this is not someone who has knowledge about one issue or some small issue in the city, but has extensive knowledge, has been all over the city, has worked with groups from Charlotte to the 19th Ward, and is a person with a view and a vision to make everyone better in the city of Rochester. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. And our next candidate is Ms. Stanley Martin. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, everyone. I would like to start by saying thank you to Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the League of Women Voters for making the electoral process accessible. And also thank you to every engaged citizen here committed to learning and making a difference in our community through the electoral process. My name is Stanley Martin. I'm a civil rights organizer and a mental health counselor. I'm a University of Rochester Warner School of Education alumni, and I'm also a concerned citizen who believes that the time for action is now. I formerly worked as a mental health counselor at Monroe Correctional Facility, providing services to a majority of people whose biggest crime was being poor, suffering a mental illness, or being survivors of very heavy abuse and childhood trauma. My role as a community organizer and role as a mental health counselor in this community, I believe is my biggest strength. I come to this work with a lens of unconditional positive regard for the people of Rochester, where I believe there's nothing anyone can do that warrants being thrown away. There's nothing anyone can do that warrants them being judged unfairly or harshly. And I do believe that bringing that lens to City Council will allow us to really respond to the needs of our community in ways that we would like to be treated. I'm really focused on the issues of public safety. As an organizer who spends quite a few years out on the streets, door knocking, talking to people in this neighborhood, I've grown to understand the deep trauma that comes from poverty and the deep trauma that comes from untreated mental illness. When we have people within the public safety field, within the police department come into our communities to attempt to provide help to us, we realize that the strategies that are being utilized simply don't work. Recently, the Rochester Police Department killed another man, Mark Gaskell, last Friday. And within the last year, they've killed two other people, Daniel Prude and Tyshawn Jones. So when I think of public safety, I do believe it's time that we reallocate funding to resources that do not result in harm and deadly force, but instead result in addressing the needs of our people, addressing poverty, addressing mental illness, addressing substance use disorder. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. So we've completed the first round of questions. And for those of you in the audience that are just joining us, let me just give you a brief update. So the candidates that are speaking this evening were all presented with 6 questions before the event started. And from those 6 questions, they have had the opportunity to choose whichever ones they wanted to respond to within a 3-minute period. For our second round, we're going to pretty much do the same thing. So from those 6 questions, the candidates will have their opportunity to respond to if one or maybe more of those questions within their allotted 3-minute time period. And we're going to go in the same order that we started with. And for those, again, who are just joining us, the order basically was selected by a lottery style. And so with that in mind, we're going to go back and hear what Mr. Miguel Melendez has to say in the second round. Mr. Melendez, please unmute your microphone.
Great, thanks again. So I'd like to address question 3, 2 main challenges the city faces. From my perspective, it's employment and community trauma. I'm going to talk about both of them. So from an employment standpoint, coming out of the pandemic, and before the pandemic, actually, the ROC 2025 plan suggested that there'll be 20,000 new jobs hitting this region by the year 2025. The projection may have changed, but one of the concerns I have is how do we create the community to these opportunities pipeline? I think that we have these various opportunities that are coming our way in the city of Rochester. We have to make sure that our residents are positioned to take those opportunities. We should not be recruiting from outside of the city to fill those jobs. And we have to find a way to make it equitable so that people can access those jobs. So that means thinking creatively about how we incentivize employers, looking at some of our assets in the city of Rochester to repurpose existing buildings. If anything, the pandemic has taught us is that work can be done from anywhere. I don't understand why we have individuals taking 2 buses to get to a call center job when those types of jobs can be completed right here in our community. Community trauma, whether you talk about the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic, homeschooling, working from home, gun violence obviously has been a major issue this year, in particular, syringe litter and the impact of drug use on community members, food insecurity, housing insecurity, business resources. These are all things that have impacted us, particularly in the last 2 years, that I think that we really need to devise a community impact strategy that's holistic and comprehensive, and that tries to look at all of these different issues in a way that improves quality of life for residents in the city of Rochester. The next question I'll address is public safety. To me, public safety is about a comprehensive approach and making sure that we're not just looking at it from a policing standpoint, but we're looking at it from a holistic community trauma perspective, opportunity perspective, and bringing resources to a community. I ask questions like, can you walk your dog in your neighborhood? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe on your trail in your backyard? And I think that in our community, we really have to look at the amenities we have and how we work towards keeping it safe. From a priority investment standpoint, I am in the current budget, we are diverting some funds. I think we have to right size the job of an officer. We have to look at what belongs in their purview and what does not. I think there's co-response models or alternative first response models that we can look at. And ultimately, public safety in this community should be a collective approach, not just focused on some of the issues we have in policing. We have to look at that and address that, but we also have to look at how we improve quality of life for residents in neighborhoods and create alternative response models. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Next, Mr. Luis Aponte, and
Thank
he's
you
all
very
set.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Luis Aponte. I want to address it almost kind of the same things, like we're following each other, even with the second part. Number 3 is main challenges. One of the main challenges the city of Rochester has right now is that it has lost all credibility with its residents in the city. Of course, you can never say 100%, but you could definitely say most. Right now, you know, we've had issues with admitting to wrongdoings and when bad things happen, and being responsive to the neighbors and in our neighborhoods. Our residents are, you know, we like passing around fancy words and saying constituents and saying all that kind of stuff, but we're not responsive to the constituents. You know, we talked about protecting residents' rights and talking about the changes to zoning, but the new changes to zoning are looking to get rid of some of the residents' rights to complain or to challenge those zoning rights. When it comes to public safety, I don't even want to be that dog. I have to say, Mr. Melendez answered that perfectly. But, you know, we need to get out there. We need, as elected officials that were elected by these communities, we need to go out there and be responsive and not stick our heads in the sand and act like everything's okay. Because you know what? We shouldn't only be seen during election time. When it's time to go out there and really get signatures and do all that kind of stuff, we need to be proactive with everything that's going on. Everything has been reactive. Not until there's 3 or 4 or 5 murders in a row do we hear from City Hall. You know, how about hearing right after each one of them individually? But lately, we don't even have time to set up a press conference individually because they've been happening so often. When it comes to quality of life, ATVs and bikes and safety, they should all be regulated. You know, when it comes to regulation, I don't like the dangling of the fruit and saying, we're going to find a place to put you so you guys could go have fun until it comes to liability. Who's going to pay for it and who's going to get sued when someone gets hurt? A lot of these people out there with these dirt bikes, they're not looking to get their bikes dirty. They're looking just to ride in the street and be unlawful. Okay, because there's plenty of places people could go and ride 4-wheelers and dirt bikes and that are accessible and that are free. Okay, when it comes to jobs and things in the neighborhoods, we have to bring jobs. It helps control the violence. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. It helps control what's happening out there. I currently sit on a committee, a steering committee with MCC to help develop an urban campus setting for workplace development. Thank you. I'll go on forever. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Aponte. Next is Mr. Anthony Hall.
Thank you again. So once again, my name is Anthony Hall, and a little bit about myself. I'm a raised Rochesterian. My grandmother, Delane Cook Green, has raised me and fundamentally have given me the spirit of serving. For years, my grandmother has been a champion in the Northeast Corridor and served the most disenfranchised and marginalized in that community. And to date, I work alongside as well as in her footsteps. She has paved a path through this time, up to this time. For me, one of the things that City Council is very important. One of their roles is the fiduciary, understanding that they're a stewardess of the money in the city of Rochester. And I think far too long, the City Council has been, for lack of better words, in bed with the mayoral part of the administration. I think a lot of times council has made decisions based on their personal interests and not the interests of the residents of Rochester. I believe as a city council person, council should be in the community much more. I guarantee if you take a poll of residents in this community and ask residents, name 5 council members, they couldn't do it. Name 9 of them, they couldn't do it. I think it's important that council reflects with ideas and solutions around those that live in the community. It's important for council to bridge that gap. Myself, I'm deliberate on doing such and being in the community and doing things every single day. It's important to bring awareness, and that's a part of council's job, to bring awareness and create town hall settings so that people can be exposed to legislation, resolutions, what's being done in council on a day-to-day basis. That's why I'm proposing, when I get in there, to move my office out of City Hall and into the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Ms. Jasmine Ivory Robinson, you are next.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the last 2 questions. So in responding to the inadequate city services and the quality of life intrusions, one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that something that doesn't often get talked about, and that is city services that we provide for individuals with disabilities. One of the things that we do have services here for transportation for individuals with disabilities, but yet it is limited. Right now, we have the RTS services that only provide transportation for individuals in Monroe County, and it's limited. And so looking at the services we provide for individuals with disabilities in our community, for them to be able to have a quality of life, to be able to move around like everyone else, to be able to go to different counties. The cost of a modified vehicle is extremely expensive, and many of our city residents cannot afford a modified vehicle for transportation and to help them get around with their wheelchair. Whether it be a powered wheelchair or a foldable one. And so I think that's an issue that we really need to address is transportation for individuals with disabilities, as well as transportation overall. And the services we provide our city residents. I'm for increasing the bike lanes, encouraging individuals to utilize the bike systems, and really just helping create that healthier lifestyle. And that also will help increase our quality of life. In addressing the COVID vaccine question regarding attending public events, I don't believe that we should force individuals to get a COVID vaccine. I am vaccinated, and it took me a while to become vaccinated. But what I did was I looked and I educated myself. I attended a couple of different forums, and how will you address the community of non-vaccinators? It's really that education piece. We know the history. I'm not going to go over that. I don't have time. We know the history in the Black community about testing. And so, but what we need to do is we need to educate. We need to go in those spaces and just really talk with their community and address the issues they have. And then leave the option to them. Again, we should never force someone to do something that they don't want to do. But what we can do is help educate them and help ease some of the concerns that they may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mitch Gruber, you are next.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for the questions. I'm going to answer question 3. What do you see as the 2 main challenges the city faces, and what solutions do you propose? As we all know, our city has a lot of challenges, but if I'm asked to choose 2 right now, I'm going to pick the following. 1, our city has a structural deficit every year because of our historically diminishing tax base. And 2, our city is incredibly segregated, and so much of our community has experienced disinvestment. So I would address the structural deficit piece by instituting pilots or payment in lieu of taxes on large nonprofit organizations that do not function as charitable organizations. I recently wrote an op-ed about this in the DNC that I hope people get a chance to read. And I referenced some critical work that's going on in cities like Philadelphia right now. In Philly, they're working really hard to ensure that University of Pennsylvania is paying a pilot to the city of Philadelphia. After all, Penn is the single biggest property holder in the city of Philadelphia. Because they're a nonprofit, they don't pay any property taxes. Yet, let's be honest, they don't operate as a charity, they operate as a business, as all private universities really do. And if you look around, the parallels to Rochester are clear. The University of Rochester is our biggest property holder. They don't pay any property taxes. They do a lot of great work in the community. I personally hold a graduate degree from the U of R. I'm not trying to criticize them as an overall institution, but they simply do not operate as a charitable enterprise, and yet they pay no property taxes, but have the most property. We need to change that. We need to figure out how to start to get them to invest in our community, and pilots are one very critical way to do that. And that's going to be a charge that I bring with a second term. Now, how do we address the segregation and the disinvestment in our community? Well, the good news is that we have a one-of-a-kind opportunity to do that in front of us right now. The Biden and Harris administration are investing unprecedented resources into our children, into our families, and hopefully soon into our infrastructure. Our New York State has just had the single most progressive legislative session they've ever had before. We have opportunities here to take some of that money and to rebuild to rebuild equity into our community, into our infrastructure, into our housing stock. And the way we do that is by looking at projects like the Interloop North, which has a chance to build real connective tissue between all parts of our city, which has an opportunity to create more home ownership opportunities for people who have been previously marginalized by the financial system. We need to do those things right. In order to do that, we need to have leaders who are responsive, leaders who are innovative, leaders who are trustworthy, leaders who understand budgets. I think I've proven that I am all of those things, and I hope to have a second term to be able to make those projects work really well for us, because we have one shot right now with all the money coming into our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gruber. Mr. Jonathan Hardin, please unmute your microphone. You are next.
Yes, I'm going to address question 3 and add that to 3 things that may be pressing our city. I also, in addition to working on my neighborhood association, I serve on a community engagement team for the Leadership Academy for Young Men. And we most recently did a survey to all of our students to find out what is on their mind, what are they thinking about that needs to be improved, or things that they would like to see come into their communities. The number one concern that the students had was safety. Safety once they going to and from school, and safety when being at home. They were scared and they want to see that change. On the opposite hand, they were also afraid to call 911 because they feel that as Black and brown youth, their experiences that they've had with the police in this area and the experience they're seeing nationwide has made them afraid to reach out to 911 for assistance. And they also asked us for things that they can do recreationally, things to get out in nature. I think that the crime issue, we definitely have to address that. But our community is telling us that they want us to invest in the PAB board, and they want us to have different alternatives to calling 911. So with that, we need to reform our 211, 311, and 911 systems to better serve our community. And we must listen to our kids when they say they want more things to do when it comes to nature and more things for them to do recreationally that will keep them out of trouble and off the streets. With one of those programs, just with my neighborhood association, I was able to reach out. We worked with different groups in our community and different groups within the region. And within the next few weeks, they're going to start a new Michelle Obama style vegetable garden at the school that the students will run and be over. But I just took those 3 things from listening to our students and listening to our youth and the people, the leaders that we're going to have in the years to come. And that is, they're concerned about safety, but they also want a public safety that works for them and works for everyone equitably. And they also want things to do in Rochester, and we need to provide that to our youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Jasmine Regler, please unmute. You are next.
Yes, so I'm going to answer number 5 about the vaccine. And just to echo what Jasmine said too, I do not think we should be forcing people to take the vaccine. I think it should be a personal and informed choice. I might not have the popular answer, but I am one of those that are unvaccinated by choice. I've done all the education, read up on it, and still have made the choice not to. I believe that we should not make people feel like every time there is an illness, the only way to overcome it is to inject foreign man-made chemicals into our bloodstream. I believe that the thing that is missing from all of this during COVID-19, we're not talking about people's health. Not once have I heard media, doctors say, we need to be healthier as a nation. And I think that is the step that we need to take. We need to be eating real food. We are one of the most developed countries in the world, and we have some of the worst food. We have chemicals put in our food that other continents do not accept, other countries do not accept. And yet we are being poisoned every single day by our food. So I would say that we have to make ourselves healthier first and then make the choice whether or not we do want to be vaccinated. I would treat the non-vaccinators the same way. I don't think they need to be treated any different. I think we need, like Jasmine said too, we need to inform them and educate them and let them make the choice. We shouldn't educate them and then say, you still need to get this. It needs to be a personal choice. People are healthy on their own, and we need to acknowledge that. Nothing is a one size fits all. So to say that everyone has to get vaccinated to make this world better, I don't agree with that. I think everyone has to eat healthy. If we all improve our health through what we put in our bodies, I don't think we would see ourselves as sick as we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Regler. Mr. Victor Sanchez, you are next. Please unmute.
Yes, thank you. And I will try to answer the next 2 questions. I believe there's a lot of overlap between them. And when we talk about the main issues, main challenges facing our city, I definitely look at it as 2 things. One is the poverty that is in our community. And 2 is the lack of resources or services that are accessible to the citizens of our community. And when we talk about poverty, there's a lot of underlying and direct links and challenges, which are affordable housing, education disparities, and good paying jobs. And I mentioned earlier that I like to look at things in a very systemic approach. And so when we talk about poverty and lacking those services, it all comes together. And how do we develop a city that is actually equitable for our community, that assures that our citizens and residents have access to healthcare, that have access to grocery stores, that have access to jobs, that are able to access transportation to take them to the places that we believe assure a quality of life for our community. And then when we talk about public safety, that also ties back to the challenges that I mentioned earlier. When we are trying to figure out how do we reimagine public safety, it really is about focusing in on those key challenges that create a lot of distress and harm in our community. So by investing in those key things and assuring that everyone has the ability for stable, affordable housing and is able to get to work, we're going to see a lot of that harm and response to it decrease. And along with that, we need to make sure that the response that when we do call on public safety response, that it is managed in a sustainable way. We don't want to see a response that is always a law enforcement with a gun. There's a lot of different approaches to this, whether it's a mental health crisis or substance abuse crisis. We have criminalized these social challenges, and we really need to figure out a comprehensive approach in tackling them, whether it's mental health professionals or social workers. And a lot of that funding does need to come from the police department, because it has to be a complete system of public safety. It's not just one possible solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Next, Mr. Alexander White.
Greetings, everyone. I'd like to start by addressing the largest problem in Rochester, and that's poverty. It is around 1/3 of all residents, and with COVID, it may even be much higher. The poverty affects virtually everything in the city, whether it is mental health problems, education, crime. There is direct links to all of this. The city, although not tasked specifically with this, does a lot of things that affect this. And one of the primary things city council needs to do is change the housing policy and strategies that we've been working on through these public-private partnerships to create housing which is unaffordable to people in poverty, which has led to raising the rent levels. We need to reverse that. We need a housing policy that instead lowers rent and increases home ownership. We need to create businesses to rebuild housing rather than tear it down. We need to work with people to so that we can spend city money when we are doing things like roofing programs on local businesses with local people here to do the work, to put the money right into our community. We have to focus on job creation and job training as options if we're going to deal with this. But we also need to look at things that, because we also have a crime problem. And we need to look at things not that are policing, but things that reduce crime. Things like recreation, anti-gang activity, street outreach, summer jobs for kids. These are all things that have been proven to have a substantial effect on crime, and we are not doing a particularly good job on them. We really should have street outreach, working in neighborhoods to work with people to provide the safety that Jonathan Hardin's kids are looking for on their way to school, and to provide options and resources to resolve problems through conflict resolutions and to hook people up with the services they desperately need to solve their personal issues, whether they are drugs or mental health or housing or transportation. City council can do these things because there's substantial money coming in to the city at this moment, and we need to change what we are doing from giving away huge tax breaks, grants, and loans to large developers, to spending that money on building the structures that will help reduce poverty and decrease crime in our community and make this a city that is working for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Next, we have Ms. Stanley Martin.
Yes, so I'm going to answer the question about what I believe the roles and responsibilities are of city council members. So I believe city council members should be bold, courageous representatives for constituents in ways that go beyond lip service, in ways that go beyond saying that you're doing things without a follow through or long lasting thought about how these institutions stay and continue to help the community. Council members should meet members of the community where they are. They should be canvassing neighborhoods consistently and not only when it's an election year. They should communicate with the community about what's important to them and where they stand on key issues that impact the course of their lives. I believe that when council members view their roles as solely fiduciary without any thoughts about creating systems to audit the institutions they allocate funding to, we tend to not succeed in achieving the intended impact we have. In order to change the material conditions of our citizens, we really have to be on the ground with them. I love Anthony's idea about removing or having an office outside of City Hall and actually inside the community in a neighborhood where folks can come in and speak to you and feel like they can rely on you when they have issues. Throughout COVID, we saw a lot of state funding coming in and a lot of it not getting to the people who needed it the most. I know a lot of nonprofit institutions got millions of dollars in funding and have struggled to reallocate them to the community based on hurdles that they create for poor people to access the help they need. So really auditing where we're putting money into and really having a process to check in with the community and to ask, is this working? And what ideas do you have regarding things we can do to make it work if it's not? Regarding the ATV question and quality of life, I'm truly deeply saddened by the recent, small movement to criminalize young, mostly men of color, for riding ATVs instead of thinking of other ways to meet the needs they have. I've seen a strong community of dirt bike riders and ATV riders try to organize with legislators regarding building a park that they would feel safe riding in, that they would not feel profiled in. So it's really regressive to hear folks talk about punishing them and creating a war on ATVs and dirt bikes when we've seen what these do and the people these things disproportionately harm. So I do think we should create an ATV bike park, just like we did for skateboarders in the city. I do think when it comes to fireworks and littering, we really should talk to people who engage in these activities and find ways to educate, create alternatives to ensure that it's not happening in neighborhoods and making people feel uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, communication is key, and understanding why people engage in certain behaviors is important in addressing the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martin. Well, audience, you've had an opportunity to hear some great responses from some of our candidates running for City Council. We'd like to thank you and thank the candidates for this discussion of these issues, because most likely they will be before City Council in 2022. So on behalf of the Rochester Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and League of Women Voters, we say thank you, audience. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please do us a favor. In the chat, we've provided you with an evaluation form. Please take a moment to fill out that evaluation form and send it back to us. We'd love to hear some of your feedback. And with this in mind, now I'm going to turn it over to Judy Sternberg, who is the president of the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, Katrina. And Tanya, if you could put up the next slide. Wonderful, thank you. So thank you, Katrina, and thank you to tonight's candidates and our co-sponsoring friends at Rochester Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. Attendees who want to learn more about candidates who will be on their primary ballots can go to the Vote for One website, seen on the slide here. There you'll find additional questions put to candidates in all the varied races that are based on your where you live in your districts. Also note our other candidate events. On May 25th at 7 p.m. there'll be a mayoral candidate debate on WROC TV that the League is co-sponsoring with Lovely Warren and Malik Evan. And on June 10th at 7 p.m. another Zoom event we'll be doing for the candidate forum for the Rochester City School District Commissioner seats. Registration is needed for that Zoom event, and you can register by going to our League website at lwvrma.org, which you see at the bottom of the slide there. And now we will move on to voting options. If we could have the next slide. So the primary is coming up next month in June, and it's time to think about your plan. So many people voted by absentee ballot last year. Absentee ballot remains available, but they're not being sent out to people automatically. You do have to contact the Board of Elections, and you do have to submit an application. The best thing to do is go to the website. Find the website of the Monroe County Board of Elections, or you can call them at the phone number listed there, and you can find all the details about what you need to do for absentee ballot voting. The temporary illness can still be used by people who have any concerns about the risk of COVID-19. Just use temporary illness. And just for your information, one of the progressive things that has been passed in Albany is a constitutional amendment that will be voted on in November that will change our state to a no excuse absentee ballot. So you don't have to put in any reason. Anybody can get an absentee ballot. So another strong reason to vote in November. Early voting, there are some site changes. There is one additional site in the city, and some of the other sites have been changed. Also, there are some changes in the suburbs. So look for that on the Board of Elections website. And then election day itself, of course, is June 22nd. And again, go to vote411.org for all your voter information. And lastly, information about our organizations. If you want to check us out, learn more about who we are and what we do, you can go to either one of our websites, look us up on Facebook, see what we're posting about, email us with questions. And at this point, we are winding down. Oh, one last thing is that, as I mentioned, we are have been recording this, and the video link of the event will soon be posted on the league website. So you can, any of your friends, family, you want to tell them about this event tonight, they'll be able to view it there. We have a YouTube site, and you can get to it from the website. So again, thank you to all our attendees. Thank you to all of our candidates. Where would we be without you? Thank you so much. You were great. And this event is now concluded, and we are going to be signing off. So good night, everybody.